Have you ever sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, staring at your phone, waiting for a message that never comes? Maybe it's been days, or even weeks, since your kids last called. And while part of you tries to brush it off, they're just busy, you tell yourself. Another part of you feels that ache. That quiet, lingering question, did I do something wrong? You're not alone in that feeling. Many parents, especially after 60, find themselves on the quieter end of the line. Our children grow up, build lives of their own, and sometimes they grow distant. That's just the natural rhythm of life, right? But it doesn't make it any easier when the people you've loved, raised, and sacrificed for seem to forget you exist. It hurts. It feels unfair. And sometimes it makes you question your worth. But here's the thing, you still matter. A lot. And how you respond to that silence matters just as much. Today, we're going to talk about 5 things you should stop doing when your kids ignore you. Not to blame yourself, but to help you take back your peace, your confidence, and your sense of purpose. Because this stage of life is not the time to feel small. It's the time to stand tall, walk with grace, and protect your spirit. Let's start with the first thing we tend to do, maybe without even realizing it. We chase. Now, you might not think of it that way. Maybe you're just checking in, sending a message here and there, leaving a voicemail or a sweet picture of the dog. Nothing wrong with that, right? But when it turns into you texting more than you get a reply, when it becomes you adjusting your schedule or mood around whether or not they call back, that's no longer love, it's pursuit. And pursuit can turn into pressure. The more we chase, the more we accidentally teach them that their silence controls us. And that's a heavy burden to carry, both for them and for us. The truth is, your presence in this world does not need to be proven with a seen message or a returned phone call. You've already shown up. You've done the work. You've loved them through every stage of their life. That's a fact, not a favor. And if they choose distance, let it be their choice. Not something you chase down trying to fix. It might feel counterintuitive, especially when all your heart wants is connection. But sometimes the most powerful move is to stop running toward them and start walking with yourself. Let the silence sit. Let them wonder. Give yourself the space to heal, to reflect, to enjoy your own company without constantly seeking theirs. The second mistake, and this one can creep in quietly, is blaming yourself. You might start going over the past, replaying moments, wondering if that one argument 5 years ago is the reason. Or if maybe, just maybe, you weren't a good enough parent after all. You think back to the teenage years, the college drop-offs, the decisions you made when you were doing your best with what you had, and suddenly you're carrying guilt that was never meant to be yours in the first place. Let me be clear. You are not responsible for every emotional reaction your children have. They are adults now, with adult minds, responsibilities, and decisions. Just as they have the right to choose who they speak to, you have the right to release the weight of blame. Guilt is not the price you pay for being a parent. It's not the currency of love. And wearing it every day like a coat you can't take off? That only keeps you cold. If your children are distant, it doesn't automatically mean you failed them. It might mean they're going through something. It might mean they've built walls you didn't place there. Or it might just mean they're prioritizing something else. That's not your failure. That's life. And it doesn't make your love any less real or your value any less sacred. Instead of blaming yourself, remind yourself of the good. The birthday parties you stayed up late planning, the scrapes you bandaged, the tears you held back when they left for college or their first job. That was love. That still is love. And love is never wasted, even if it goes unreturned for a while. Third, and this one is harder to admit sometimes, we lose ourselves trying to stay relevant in their lives. We rearrange our schedules to match theirs. We hold off on vacations or social plans because, what if they want to visit this weekend? We start tiptoeing around topics, trying not to upset them. Maybe we even start watching the shows they like, or joining social media just to feel closer. And slowly, without even noticing it, we shape our lives around the possibility of their attention. But here's what I want to gently remind you. Your life is not on pause, waiting for anyone else to press play. You deserve a life that feels full, even when no one else is watching. You deserve mornings where you wake up excited about your own plans, not just waiting to be invited into someone else's. Your time is valuable. Your interests, your joys, your health, all of it matters. Don't let your world shrink down to the size of someone else's silence. Reconnect with the parts of you that once made your heart light up. Maybe it's gardening, writing, painting, walking with friends, or even volunteering. When you pour into yourself again, something beautiful happens. You start to glow in ways that no amount of outside validation could ever produce. You don't need to shrink yourself to stay in their view. Stand tall. Live loud. Let them see the life you're building. Not because you need to prove anything, but because it's yours. And if they come back into the picture, great. But let them return to a version of you that is full, not waiting. Sometimes we teach people how to treat us by how we treat ourselves. And when you carry yourself with joy, self-respect, and quiet confidence, you send a message that says, "I'm here, I love you, but I'm not crumbling in your absence." You may be surprised how much that strength speaks louder than any voicemail could. We talked about how chasing, blaming yourself, or losing your own sense of self can slowly chip away at your peace when your kids pull away. But there's another pattern that often slips in quietly. The way we keep trying to explain ourselves, even when no one's asking. It might sound like, "I just want to make things clear," or "I hope you didn't take that the wrong way," or even, "I just want you to understand where I was coming from." At first glance, those words seem kind, thoughtful even. And they are, especially when spoken with good intention. But if you find yourself explaining over and over, trying to fix a silence that wasn't yours to begin with, what you're really doing is handing over your emotional balance to someone else. You're putting yourself in a position where your peace depends on whether they accept your explanation. And that, dear friend, is a fragile place to live. There's a quiet kind of dignity in saying, "I've said what I needed to say, and now I trust that's enough." You don't need to argue for your goodness. You don't need to repackage your love in hopes that this time it'll be received better. If someone wants to misunderstand you, no amount of clarification will help. But if someone wants to understand you, they won't need you to keep justifying your heart. They'll already know it. Let's take a breath here and talk about why this habit shows up so often, especially in parents. We spent years raising our kids, guiding them, being their safe place. And somewhere along the way, we learned to fix things fast. If they cried, we soothed them. If they got upset, we apologized, even when it wasn't our fault, just to keep the peace. That instinct is beautiful in parenting. But when they grow up and start seeing us not just as caregivers but as people with flaws and limits, things shift. And if we're not careful, we keep wearing that old pattern of over-explaining, over-apologizing, and overreaching, just to keep a sense of closeness. But here's the truth. Your value doesn't come from being perfectly understood. It comes from being honest, loving, and real. And if they need time, let them have it. If they need space, give it freely. But don't twist yourself into knots trying to convince anyone of your worth. You already have it. Now let's talk about another big one. Letting their silence control your mood. It happens so fast, doesn't it? You wake up feeling fine, but then you check your messages, still nothing. No call, no text. And just like that, your heart sinks. The day feels a little heavier. You try to stay busy, but it nags at you. A part of you waits by the phone even when you're doing something else. It becomes the background music of your life. Quiet, but always there. This is where it gets dangerous. When we allow someone else's absence to decide whether or not we enjoy our day, we've handed over the keys to our happiness. And the person we've handed them to, they might not even realize they're holding them. That's the thing about emotional dependency. It doesn't always look like drama. Sometimes it just looks like someone sitting quietly, slowly fading. But you deserve better than that. You deserve mornings that start with your own purpose. Afternoons filled with what brings you joy. Evenings that close with gratitude, not longing. That doesn't mean you don't care about your children. It doesn't mean you're cold. It means you love them deeply, but you love yourself enough not to be governed by their silence. I know that sounds simple when said out loud, but I understand it takes practice. Start small. Maybe it's a walk in the morning where you leave your phone at home. Maybe it's preparing a meal you love, even if no one else is coming over to share it. Maybe it's reading a book that inspires you instead of scrolling through old photos. The little things build up. Over time, they rebuild a life that isn't dependent on waiting. Because the truth is, when you reclaim your peace, you don't just feel better, you become better. Stronger. More centered. You begin to remember who you are outside the role of mom or dad. You start reconnecting with the version of yourself that existed before your life was all about them. That person is still in there, wise, capable, and worthy. You've poured so much love outward. Maybe now's the time to pour some of that back in. And finally, let's talk about something that sounds noble on the surface, but often leads to quiet heartbreak. Constantly changing your plans for the possibility of them showing up. We've all done it. You cancel the lunch with a friend just in case they decide to drop by. You hold off booking that weekend getaway because they might call. You put your own joys and routines on hold for a maybe. And every time that maybe turns into nothing, a little part of you feels smaller. You deserve more than to live in the land of maybe. It's not wrong to want to be available. But when your availability starts costing you your joy, your routines, your own forward motion, that's when it becomes a mistake. A costly one. You're allowed to have a life that doesn't pause every time someone else is unsure. You're allowed to say yes to yourself, even when others are silent. Start planning things you genuinely want to do. Book the trip. Take the painting class. Visit the friend you've been meaning to call. Fill your calendar with the kind of days that make you feel alive, not just the ones that wait for someone else's attention. And if they happen to call while you're out living your best life, even better. You'll be ready to talk, not from a place of need, but from a place of fullness. Because you are not a backup plan. You are not someone who waits in the wings, hoping to be remembered. You are the main character in your own life story. And this chapter, this beautiful golden chapter, is about you finally stepping into the light again. We've come a long way together in this conversation. And if you're still here, listening, reflecting, and taking these words to heart, I want to say something important. You are doing beautifully. It takes strength to face emotional distance, especially when it comes from your own children. It takes grace to step back, regroup, and choose peace over pain. And most of all, it takes wisdom to change your patterns, not out of bitterness, but out of love for yourself. Now that we've uncovered so many of the common traps, chasing, blaming, over-explaining, letting silence control you, or changing your life around their availability, let's bring it all together with one final truth. And it may be the most empowering truth of all. You are not here to earn their love. You've already given yours. That's something many of us forget, especially after years of parenting. We get used to doing, fixing, giving. So when that love doesn't come back the way we hoped, the calls stop, the visits become rare, the birthdays go unnoticed, we start wondering, what more can I do? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the better question is, what more can I give to myself now? You've spent decades showing up for your children. You've given your time, your money, your attention, your dreams, even your sleep. You carried their burdens, celebrated their milestones, and sat silently through moments when they forgot to ask how you were doing. That kind of love is powerful. It's lasting. But it was never meant to empty you out completely. You are not less of a parent because your kids are distant. And you are not more of one if you suffer quietly while waiting for them to return. What makes you a strong parent, what makes you a strong person, is knowing when to release the need for validation and instead choose your own wholeness. And yes, I know, it's not easy. The silence can feel personal. Rejection stings, even if it's not meant to be cruel. But sometimes distance is not about you at all. It's about where they are in their journey. And though it hurts to say, some people simply aren't ready to show up in a way you deserve, that doesn't mean they won't come back. And it certainly doesn't mean you have to close your heart. But what it does mean is that you have to stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to enjoy your life again. The door to peace is already open. You just have to walk through it. So take a deep breath. Right now. In this moment, ask yourself, not what's missing, but what you still have. You have mornings to wake up to, meals to savor, friends to laugh with, memories to cherish, dreams that are still alive. You have stories to tell, books to read, music to dance to, and quiet afternoons where you can simply enjoy being you. And you have wisdom, oh, so much wisdom, that no silence can erase. Now maybe your children will reach out again one day. Maybe they'll surprise you with a visit or a heartfelt apology or just a phone call that reminds you of who they used to be. And when that happens, you'll be ready, not from a place of pain or waiting, but from a place of strength and steadiness. And if they don't, you'll still be okay, more than okay, because you will have already built a life that isn't waiting for someone else's yes to feel meaningful. That's the beauty of this stage of life. You're not trying to prove yourself anymore. You're not chasing milestones. You're choosing what matters, who matters, and how you want to feel. Every day becomes a decision to either mourn what you've lost or celebrate what you still hold. And I hope you choose the latter. Because let me tell you something that I wish every older adult could hear. You are the prize. Not in a flashy, look-at-me kind of way, but in a quiet, grounded, powerful way. You are the person who has lived, loved, lost, and still shows up. You've made sacrifices. You've learned from pain. You've evolved. And that makes you rich in resilience, in heart, and in depth. People may come and go, but your worth, that stays. Your peace, that's yours to protect. And your joy, that is something no one else should be able to take away. So if you're listening to this right now and your heart is aching from being ignored by the people you once held so close, I want you to try something. Just for today, don't reach out to fill the silence. Instead, fill your own space with whatever brings you even a flicker of joy. Water your plants. Watch the birds. Listen to that song you used to love. Call a friend. Walk outside and breathe deeply. Smile at a stranger. Do something for you. And when you lay your head down tonight, say to yourself, I am proud of the love I've given, and I am ready to receive love from myself now. Let that be your new starting point. And if you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your voice. Truly, you matter. Your story matters. So share it in the comments. Let's build a space here, on this channel, where we lift each other up, remind one another that life after 60 is not a closing chapter. It's a brand new volume. If this message touched your heart, if it gave you even a small sense of comfort or strength, I hope you'll like this video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. Because this is the place where we celebrate who we are, boldly, honestly, and with dignity. Together, we're creating a community where no one is forgotten and no one has to walk this path alone. Here's to your courage, your clarity, and your confidence. Here's to living your best life at any age. And above all, here's to you, just as you are, in all your strength, your softness, and your quiet power. Keep going. Keep shining. And always remember, you are not waiting to be loved. You are love.